Now that we have a sturdy table, we need to have a plan. And we've chosen a plan out of this 1966 Lionel manual. This is the track plan that we've chosen for this layout, and it has an over-under aspect to it. We're going to be building an embankment along this section for one part of the grade. We're going to have a bridge across here, and then we're going to have a trestle set coming down the back side here. And we'll also be incorporating a bunch of accessories around the layout. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint the table brown, and what this does, it provides a little bit of scenic insurance. If we do end up with a bare spot or miss a spot, it won't show through too badly, and you'll see brown underneath. There's no need to be artistic at this stage. We want to get it covered fairly quickly here. Just a rough coat of paint. But remember, when you're painting, you don't need to put it on really thick. You just want to get it colored. We've chosen flat latex in just a general brown color. Anything that looks earthy. Work gets done more quickly when you're a genie. We've chosen to enhance the look of the regular Lionel track by adding additional ties. After a quick coat of flat black paint, we'll be ready to cut the ties to length. We've chosen a screen mold that's basically about a 1/4 inch thick and maybe 3/4 inch wide. Now we're ready to cut the ties to length. 2 1/4 should do. So we set up the saw, measuring out 2 1/4 inches from the outside of the blade. We want these bundles to stay together after we've cut them so that we can quickly spray the ends black. We've got a nice clean square end here, and we're ready to go. Okay, we've got just over 100 ties here now, and you need 4 of them per section of track. Now that we've got the bundles completed here, we can paint the ends with the bundle intact, and then we'll remove the tape. Looks just like fresh creosote. A straight blade screwdriver, a pair of needle nose pliers, a pair of track pliers, a hacksaw, a saber saw, a cordless screw gun, and a staple gun. Now it's time to assemble the track, and what we're going to do is we're going to lay the track out on the table to make sure that everything fits. We want to pre-assemble the track, and this is how we're going to mark where we want to cut for the embankment.
Use work gloves when assembling the track, particularly if it's new track. You will save yourself a lot of cuts and scratches. If you use old track, use track pliers to resize the track openings. It's important the track fit tightly together.
Basically what we're going to do is we're going to raise this up and put a bridge in this area to span over these 2 tracks. And then we'll bring our trestle around the back here. And we're going to build our embankment over this section. With the track in the proper position, we'll take a marker and draw a line along where we want to cut. We're leaving about 3/4 of an inch to an inch outside the track. We're going to disassemble the track now and put it aside in sections, and so we have a clean workspace, and then we're going to use the saber saw and cut out this. This step is called cookie cutting. Okay, there's two different ways we could start this. We could start it by drilling a hole, but we're just going to start with a plunge cut here, which means when I turn the saw on, we're going to actually go very slowly and carefully and press down hard here, and we'll actually begin a cut. Okay? Here we go. All right, we're approaching the center brace that runs right through this section here. You can see the screws, the line of screws that indicates that center brace. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the saw up similar to the beginning plunge cut, and we're going to not saw through the brace, but we will saw through the plywood right here. Okay, if we remove this one screw, and there we have it. Notice that we've left this end attached. This will allow for a smooth transition up the hill. This is Lionel's graduated trestle set. Inside, we'll find a number of piers or bents. Each bent is marked for its relative height using a letter. This one is a D bent. This is Lionel's complete trestle set. We're not going to be using the entire trestle set because we have decided to cookie cut the one section. We're only going to use half of it. Okay? Because we cookie cut out this section here, we're going to have to add an extra 45-inch support underneath this section right here. What we've done here is we've laid out the Lionel trestle set so that we can get an approximate idea of how the cookie cutter area is going to be graded up. Okay? That starts over here where the plywood is still connected to the original piece of plywood, and then it gradually gains height. And then over here, we've actually separated the plywood. And what we'll be doing next is we'll be installing additional supports underneath, and we'll do that by using some small 2x4 blocks that'll go underneath this area, and then we'll add risers underneath.
To support the risers, short lengths of 2x4s are secured about 12 inches apart underneath the opening. Then graduated lengths of 2x4s are secured vertically to the horizontal supports. The grade is then screwed down to the vertical risers.
You can see that we've duplicated the grade here that the trestle set would achieve. We didn't want to use the trestle set so that we could create an embankment here using screen and plaster. So we're going to start by fastening the screen using the staple gun. And I'm doing this from behind so that we don't have the raw edge of the screen out there. If you've noticed, I've got the track back in its proper position, and that's just so that I can tell approximately, how much space we have here to build this embankment. We finished putting the screen on, and now we're ready to mix some plaster.
Next, we are going to cover the screen with a water-soluble wall-covering compound called Durabond 90. Mix the Durabond with water at about a 1-to-1 ratio. You want the mixture about as thick as cake frosting.
For the same reason that we painted the table brown, we're going to be adding paint pigments to the plaster so that we don't end up with white spots in case it chips or shows through.
If you want to use more than one color, divide the Durabond, then add the various colors. Paint pigments may be purchased at any art supply store. Good earthy tones to use are lamp black, burnt umber, raw umber, burnt sienna, and raw sienna. We are adding burnt umber to this batch.
We're just going to begin applying this and just press gently. We want it to work its way into the screen without totally falling through. This is just to get the screen filled in and get a base coat. Kind of like frosting a cake.
After the Durabond dries, chip off any excess. Make sure the path where the track will go is clear. Next, clean the table surface with a vacuum. We are now ready to permanently install the track. Use 1 1/4" screws to secure the track. Use at least 1 screw for each section and make sure the connections are tight.
Okay, to assemble the trestle, we're going to slide the clip into the top of the bent, and then we're going to put that, and you need to slide it right in under the ties. Bend those down a little bit, and there it is. And then we'll put a couple of screws in here. We're all set.
It is amazing how much better these ties make Lionel track look, and the ties are easy to install. Just add Elmer's glue on the bottom, smooth it out, slide them under the track, and press down. Don't worry about any excess glue. It will disappear when it dries. We are using Woodland Scenic's track ballast. Fill a small funnel with the ballast and apply between the rails and alongside of the track, using your finger to control the flow. Use about a 1/2 inch wide paintbrush to smooth the ballast and remove excess from the ties. Use a smaller brush for detail cleaning. Next, we are going to spray the ballast with a mixture of water, Elmer's glue, and a little soap detergent. Make sure the edges are neat.
Now we're going to use the glue mixture. The glue is mixed about the consistency of milk.
Wipe off the tracks before the mixture dries.
This is going to be our control panel. We've taken 2 scraps of plywood, just an arbitrary angle on them so that we've got a nice face, and we're going to connect that with this piece of 2x4, and then we're going to screw that right to the table. We've decided to locate our control panel in the middle so that we save on wire. I think that'll hold.
Cut a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to fit over the brackets, screw it down, paint it black, and mount the transformer.
Supply power to the track, we've chosen to use Romex. This is a number 14 gauge, and we're just going to open up the jacket on this, and then we'll peel it back. And what you get is 3 wires. You get a black one, a white one, and a bare copper one. We're going to use the bare copper wire that we removed from the Romex as our common ground for the layout. We're going to pass the wire up through the hole we made in the control panel. And using a pair of needle nose pliers, we're going to kind of bend a loop on the end of that wire so that it goes over the post better. Okay. We want to make sure that we don't accidentally have this wire come in contact with the other posts of the transformer. So we're going to use a little bit of electrical tape to cover it, just so that it doesn't touch one of these 2 posts here. Just going to wrap this up here. Okay, tighten it down, we're all set. Using a pair of wire strippers, we're going to take some of the insulation off this black wire. Tough stuff. About a 1/2 inch. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did with the bare copper wire. We're going to pass it up through the hole. Bend it over, and this time we're going to attach it to the post marked A. That's going to be our throttle. All set. We've chosen to use the A throttle to control the trains because we're right-handed and it's the most comfortable to use. We're going to use the B post to control the accessories, the C post to control the lights, and the D post we'll use for the trolley.
We are using a Lionel post-war ZW transformers, but all transformers essentially operate the same way. There are hot post and ground posts. The ground is common to all hot posts, 4 in the case of the ZW.
We've drilled 1 hole along the outside rail for the ground wire, and we're going to drill 1 hole between for the power wire, which will connect to the center rail. We're going to be applying the power to the track in a number of different locations. This is so that the train doesn't slow down when you get far away from the transformer.
The first step in wiring any layout is to staple 3 wires to the underside of the table. The 3 wires are a common ground, a dedicated positive or hot track wire, and a dedicated accessory wire. The 3 wires should be stapled about so they can be easily spliced into no matter where you go with the track or where you place an accessory. To install a feeder wire for the track, solder one end of a wire to the middle rail of the track and the other end of the dedicated track wire. Then solder the ground wire to one of the outside rails and the other end of the common ground wire. When you need a hot wire for an accessory, go from the hot terminal on the accessory to the dedicated accessory wire. Then another wire from the ground terminal on the accessory to the common ground wire. The hot track wire on our layout goes back to the A terminal on the transformer, and the dedicated accessory wire goes back to the B terminal on the transformer. The ground wire goes back to one of the ground terminals. We now have power to the main loop. Lionel supplies this 153C controller to operate crossing gates, semaphores, and other accessories requiring a simple on and off action. For better operation, use an insulated track section.
We're going to turn this piece of track into an insulator section. And to do that, we're going to need some extra insulators, and we're going to take an old piece of track that we have laying around and take the insulators out of that piece of track. In order to remove the insulators from the old piece of track, we need to take a straight blade screwdriver and gently pry up the tabs that hold the insulator and the center rail in place. And there it is, a bunch of insulators that will just slide right off of here. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to reinstall the insulators into the new section of track. And to do that, we're going to use similar technique by prying open the metal tabs on each of the ties. Okay. A little more difficult to do the last one because the rest of the rail is already loose. Because the tie hasn't had an insulator in this position before, we're going to take a pair of needle nose pliers and we're going to open the tabs up just a little wider than they were before. You can see the mark where the rail used to go into the tie, and we're just going to put it in, and we're going to put the insulator over that portion, and now we're ready to reassemble the insulator section. Using a pair of pliers, we're just going to take the tabs and crush them back into position over the newly installed insulator. We want to make sure that the insulator is centered over the tie so that there's no chance that the tie will come in contact with the newly insulated rail. Now there's only one more thing to do, and that is we have the rail insulated. We need to put in insulating pins on both ends so that it still does not come in contact with the other side rail. I'm going to remove the pin here. Now that we have the insulator section complete, we can operate accessories like a gate man or a crossing gate or a semaphore. Anything that requires a simple on-off action can be activated with this insulator section.
When the wheels come in contact with the insulated track section, the circuit is completed and the gate goes down. When the wheels of the last car leave the insulated section, the circuit is broken and the gate goes up.
We've hooked the white wire, which is going to be connected to the insulated rail, to this clip, and we've hooked the red wire, which is going to go back to the transformer.
Two more accessories activated by insulated track sections are the gateman and whistle shed. In both, the white wire is connected to the insulated section. When the train comes in contact with the insulated section, the gateman pops out and the whistle is activated. To create a more realistic looking terrain, we placed chips of styrofoam on the flat table surface, covered the chips with screening, stapled the screening to the table, then covered the screening with the same wall compound we used for the embankment. If you don't plan to paint the plaster, apply the ground cover while the plaster is still wet.
Okay, now it's time for some scenery. The ground cover that we're going to be using comes in a variety of colors and textures. We're going to be using some full-strength Elmer's glue, and we're just going to kind of take a paintbrush and coat a small area with the glue.
Adding scenery is the fun part of building a layout. Get your family involved. There are lots of different colors and materials to choose from, and everyone will have good ideas.
We're just going to sprinkle this on, spread it around. We'll mix up the different colors a little bit.
We found a bag of post-war 919 Lionel grass lying around, so we decided to put it down. It's pretty much like the Woodland Scenic stuff, but it was fun using original Lionel grass, which came in a nice cloth-printed bag with a drawstring. After the ground cover is applied, spray with the same mixture of glue and water to hold it down. Wipe off any excess. Accessories with a plastic base, like a telephone pole or tree, are best secured to the table surface with hot glue.
Woodland Scenics also offers a line of kit trees, and these kits are really neat to build and fun to do, and they're fairly easy. Basically what you have is a plastic tree armature here, and half the secret to doing these trees is to bend them properly. So we're going to start by removing the base. We'll just set that aside for a moment. And the way to do this is you just bend the trunk around, just kind of twist it up so that the branches start to take on a three-dimensional nature. When it came out of the package, it was totally flat. It's rather tough plastic. It's not easy to break. You can just keep twisting and twisting until you get something that you like, and you might want to add a little bit of a bend to the trunk. The secret to making these trees look really good is you need to fan the branches out as much as possible. Get them as far away from each other as you can. Sometimes it helps to actually go out and sit outside and look at trees and see how they grow. The reason you want to have the branches fanned out as much as possible is when we dip them in the glue, which we'll do next, you're going to, after you dip them in the glue, you're going to dip them into a container holding the foliage, and you want to be able to pick up as much of that foliage as possible. We've basically taken a flat tree and turned it into a three-dimensional tree. Notice how the branches are rather evenly spaced around the tree as you look at it. This is the foliage that comes with the tree kit, and we're going to empty the contents into a small container. We're going to be using contact cement to adhere the foliage to the tree trunk. For the purposes of demonstration, we're just going to gently and carefully dip each of the branches in the can. You could use a paintbrush for this. Okay, here we go. This container's just a little small, but we'll get it. Okay, we're going to remove the excess material now that we've got the tree coated, because we want to save that excess material for later use on another tree. So what we're going to do, we've got a box here, and we're just going to take the tree and stick it in the box and twirl it around and save the excess. And there we have it. We can put the excess back in to be reused.
The Lionel O-Gauge remote control switch is a staple of every toy train layout and is the key to unlimited track planning possibilities. It works well and is easy to install. Connect the 3 wires from the controller directly to the 3 terminals on the switch. The fixed voltage plug keeps the voltage constant on the switch no matter how much voltage is controlling the train. The wire from the plug goes back to terminal B on the ZW. Lionel switches have a non-derailing feature. If a train approaches and the switch is turned the wrong way, the switch will change to the correct position the instant the lead wheels of the engine come in contact with the switch. Amazing! I guess that's what they mean when they talk about the magic of Lionel. Lights are easy and they look great. 2 wires, one to the ground and one to the accessory hot wire. Well, we're running out of time. We hope this video helps you get started building your own layout. There's no one way to go. Types of layouts and methods are as varied as colors on cabooses. We have shown you the way we built our layout, and we had fun doing it. And that's the point. Building a layout is fun. You learn about electricity, about building things. It's creative. You have to make decisions like where to put the mountain, the lake, the farm. It's also a great way to bring a family together, for dads and moms to have fun with their kids. There's something to do for everyone. And when you turn the lights off and see the layout in the dark for the first time, with the trains running and all those tiny lights, it's a kick, a great source of satisfaction. So get started. You'll be amazed how many ideas you'll come up with and how much enthusiasm you will generate. And when you think you're finished, tear down a few partitions and start phase 2. Like everyone who has ever built a layout says, you never finish.